Welcome to episode 43 of Broad Street Hustle. We pretty calm show today. Not too much in the sports world, but we do have a few topics we're going to cover. We're going to do a quick Sixers talk of I know last week we spoke about the Sixers, the NBA, some post trade talk, but Sixers did play a few big games in the last week, so we'll recap some of those and some opinions there. And then we're going to do more horses. So I said last week we touched briefly on the Derby Trail, and we're going to continue. It is the Fountain of Youth over at Gulfstream. We have a pick four that we're going to talk about there. And then we do have one race over at Santa Anita, which is the Big Cap, one of their bigger races. We're only going to do the single race at that racetrack. But let's get started. Joining me, as always, co-host Jason Sayada.
Hey, Tom. How are you?
Hello, Jason. And joining us in the bottom quadrant, usually, if you're watching on YouTube, and he's in usually a different picture each week. So we shall see what it is this week. Jimmy the Chalk.
Took a shower and everything, but I got my own space at the bottom, so we'll see how that goes.
And we are without Christopher Michael Meeker this week. He had a prior engagement, plus he doesn't really do the horses, and this show's pretty much going to be more horse racing. We will have him back next week, as next week is our MLB Baseball 2023 preview show. We'll give futures, pick some division winners, who's going to go to the World Series, some individual awards. It's always a fun show. Then we'll have more horse shows as we go into the Derby. We have our Master show coming up, so it is going to be a pretty fun upcoming couple weeks and months. This is probably the lull before the storm, I would say.
Can I throw something in before we move on?
Absolutely.
We have to. I'd be remiss not to mention our crack producer, Chalky, who's done an unbelievable job. I feel. Just putting together the show each week, adding in replay clips and just really doing a bang job. What do you think, Tom?
Yeah, I mean, we asked them to join the show strictly to be technology wise, since we weren't capable. We didn't really care about his sports opinions, his horse opinions, and honestly, that hasn't really changed. But it has been his ability to put in race replays. I was very impressed with that. Although I wish maybe he can go back and delete it based on the opinion I gave on it. But it was very impressive. I think we've come a long way from our first show where we had three soup cans and a string tied together to now we're on YouTube. We're throwing in race replays. We got music in the beginning, and that's all thanks to Jimmy the Chalk.
Yep.
Jimmy, you want your 20 seconds of fame here?
We can keep it to 10. Sometimes you stumble into things. If you're not good at one thing, like making predictions, you better find another avenue to be a contributor. So we'll see how long I can keep it up.
All right. Well, let's get started. Like I said, Sixers, we did talk last week about the Sixers. Let's jump back into it for this week. Couple big games. They played Memphis, where they did come out with a win. They had an incredible battle against Boston. Great game. Came back and lost to the Heat. Is that correct? And then beat the Heat. And I guess they are playing tonight as we speak. So a pretty big stretch. I know Jason alluded to, or Jimmy, we'll forget who, the stretch of the second half where they played like they have the toughest schedule since after the All-Star break. And that's shown already where, you're playing Memphis, Boston, the Heat. What's our thoughts, Jason?
Yeah, I mean, like you mentioned, it was a really rough, or not rough, but I guess interesting week for them. Actually, the Memphis game was going on while we were taping our last episode, so didn't see much of that, but did know that they came roaring back. I mean, they were down pretty big in that game, so that was a nice win. I was actually encouraged versus the Celtics. I know, obviously they lost that game, but they showed they could hang with them. I mean, they played. That was a great game. I mean, unbelievable game. Embiid almost made the greatest shot I've ever seen in my life. And by a split second, it didn't count. But I was kind of encouraged, even though they lost. They showed that they could hang with the Celtics, which in the past they haven't shown that. Then they looked terrible versus Miami in the first game here. Just an awful game. And they were out rebounded. They were just out hustled in that game. It was just not a good game. And they came back last night without Embiid, and they beat Miami in Miami. So, I thought Harris played well actually against the Celtics. Was totally invisible in the Miami game here, and then played pretty well last night. Maxi's interesting to me. While I like the idea of him coming off the bench and giving them scoring off the bench, it seems like he's just the prime ball handler off the bench. He's the point guard, and I think he struggles a little with that. I'd rather see him play off the ball, and when he's on the court, obviously Harden is ball dominant when he's on the court. So when he starts, he's off the ball. I really wish that they would pick up a true backup point guard. Maybe in the buyout market or something. They didn't do it at the trade deadline, which kind of disappointed me. But I really prefer that because then if Maxey does come off the bench, at least he's not handling the ball.
Yeah, the one thing I'll add with Maxey is, I to your point where he's ball dominant, kind of acts like the point guard. But there was a couple plays in the Boston game where he was on the court with obviously every game he's on the court with Harden, and one thing that stood out to me was he I think it was Harden or somebody threw him a pass right behind the three, and there was about 3-4 seconds on the shot clock, and he had a very good look, and instead of taking the shot, he was like timid, and he passed it back to Harden in the corner, and Harden had like two guys on him with a second left in the shot clock, and obviously he just threw it up, and it was like, why is Maxey not taking that shot? It's almost is it a confidence thing? So I think is he still trying to figure out his role when he's out there with them guys?
I think he tends to do that a little bit still in big games where he's you're on the court with two Hall of Famers basically. I mean, one definite Hall of Famer, Harden, and then Embiid I'm sure is going to be a Hall of Famer. So it's hard for him to basically be aggressive in that regard, but he's got to do it. They need him to do it. So,
and then you watch the game that they won, I guess, last night, and he had the ball at the top of the key, and he penetrates the lane, get back to his aggressive style. I think didn't score, but drew the foul, and it's like, okay, that's the Maxey that we had last year. So again, is he just trying to still feel his way through the roles in the game, and could he still kind of turn this season around and be back to where he was last year, which would make a tremendous difference?
I think he's still getting back from the injury. If you guys remember, before he got hurt, he was scoring like, I want to say 23 points a game. He
missed a good amount of time too.
Oh yeah, he missed at least 6 weeks, I would say. And when he first came back, he struggled a little bit. Now he hasn't been back that long. He's probably only 3 weeks that he's been back. So, I think once he works that rust off and stuff, hopefully he'll be back to what he was becoming before he got hurt. And then real quick, I just wanted to throw in, right now they sit third behind the Bucks and Celtics. The Bucks are on this crazy win streak, 16 in a row. I'd still prefer them, believe it or not, to play Milwaukee rather than Boston in the playoffs. I just think they match up a little better with Milwaukee than they do Boston.
Yeah, we can get into it quickly a little more, but I do think they need to get a little bit lucky in the playoffs and get a favorable matchup. Maybe not face Boston in the playoffs to go. So I would prefer Milwaukee as well. Chalky, anything to add there?
I mean, I think it's just interesting that those 4 games, and there was there were four very different games. There's very, very little that was similar between the 4. Jason mentioned comeback win, clawed it out against the Grizzlies. Some crazy last 90 seconds or so of that game where they were behind pretty much the whole time. Boston, they blew double-digit leads in both halves, and then went down by 10 or whatever, came back to get tie at the end. And really, to Jason's point earlier, you had really bad games from Maxey and Harden in the Boston game. And I mean, Embiid played great, and they were a plus 12 or whatever it was when he was on the court. But he can't play 48 minutes. So the Miami game, they just never, I mean, it was close late. I think they might even have the lead late, but they were just lazy the whole game. It was like they were checked out. And then you don't have Embiid the other night.
I mean,
and they blow him off the court. And so to what you were saying about Maxey, after the Boston game, I mean, Embiid said he grabbed Maxey in the locker room and was like, listen, like you gotta assert yourself. Don't defer to me. Don't defer to Harden in these situations. Like go out there, play your game. And if if you're open, shoot. And then he goes out back-to-back nights. He's put up 26 and 27. He was 8 for 16, 10 for 17. So, he's rebounded off that game so far. But a very up and down stretch for the last couple games. And, buyout market, I don't think there's really going to be, I mean, by now, if you haven't been bought out already, you can't get bought out, I think, and be eligible for the playoffs. So the one player that I guess that you were, along the lines of you're thinking, Jason, was Dragic, and I forget where he said he was going. That's not
Milwaukee.
Sixers.
Milwaukee.
Milwaukee. The one need that they still seem to have is a steady backup center for when Embiid comes out. I would not be against them seeing if they can bring Noel in now that he got bought out. He was a name that was mentioned around the trade deadline. He would certainly be their best rebounder off the bench. I know they're going to probably play Tucker some small five a little bit, but he can play defense. He can catch those lobs. He's a better option than anybody else, even though Paul Reed did bounce back from that horrendous Boston game with a nice game last night. But, I mean, we can't rely on him. So I would see if I could bring him in, but I don't think you're going to get any guard help at this point. Unless Mac McClung is going to come in and run the point. But
yeah, look, for me, that that 4-game stretch showed you that the regular season is just like they play hard. The Memphis game, they come back. The Boston, it's like Jimmy said, there's 4 different games. The Heat game that they thought they should win, they lose. Although Harden did have a pretty good look at the end there to win the game. Then the Heat game they're supposed to lose, they win. It's just like, the regular season is just pushing the chips back and forth. You're not going to really know until it's playoffs. You play one team 3 times, 4 times. To me, the Sixers are good enough to be a team that can compete for a title. I mean, and it's going to come down to, and I think me and Jason were texting back and forth. They lost that Boston game because Horford was hitting shots. I mean, if Horford's hitting shots like that, you're not going to win that game.
Yeah.
The Sixers, if PJ Tucker's knocking down corner threes or Harris is knocking down threes, they're probably going to win, and that's what it's going to come down to in the playoffs, right? It's going to be those guys. You're going to get your points from Embiid. Harden's going to give you his points, his assists. Maxey will give you that spark. It's going to be those players hitting those shots in big moments to win, because you need that extra little push to get over teams like Boston. Like
you're
Milwaukee,
to your point, you're going to be doubling Embiid, sometimes doubling Harden, you're doubling Tatum. Somebody's open. It's going to be Al Horford. If Al Horford's hitting threes,
you're in trouble.
You're in trouble.
I mean,
threes,
like you said, that game showed. I mean, again, it's regular season, but we don't really. What else do you really have to go off of? That game showed they can hang with Boston. It's 7 games. Obviously, Boston's a better team, and you give Boston the edge, of course. But they can hang for games. They could steal a game here. They could steal a game there, and then you don't know what can happen. I think it showed that they're good enough to hang with those teams, to be competitive, to play for a title this year. And you need Embiid to play like that, like he did in the game against Boston. You need him not to be injured in the playoffs. You need, there's a lot of factors.
Yeah. I mean, I was going to mention that. I mean, it almost goes without saying, but 5 years Embiid's been in the playoffs. He's missed games in 4 of the 5. And the one he didn't was the year they got swept. They didn't have Simmons. So, I mean, everybody's got to deal with it, so you're just almost kind of come to expect it. But, I mean, if he misses any kind of time in the second round or later, they're going to be very much behind it. And you got a team like Boston, again, regular season games. Boston, Milwaukee have won games with their stars out. Sixers did it last night against a mediocre, perhaps, Heat team now, although a veteran team. They have no room for error without Embiid in the playoffs. So making sure that he's healthy and resting him towards the end of the year if they have to, because he's got
what was
what
was their record last year? Didn't he miss the first 2 Miami games last year?
They were 0-2 last year.
They lost both, right? I mean, so they're.
But it's funny. I mean, I don't have all the teams in front of me. I think after last night they're 9-4 without him in the lineup this year, and part of that was because Harden and Maxey played real well until they started getting hurt. But it hasn't been as much of Yeah, it's regular season. And,
it makes a big difference.
When you see how much it changes the game sometimes when he comes off the court, he's going to be playing more minutes in the playoffs. Like, you got to do everything you can to make sure because he's going to wear down playing 40 minutes a game. So you just got to rest him as much as you can and hope for the best.
And you also have to remember in the regular season, when the opposing team sees that he's not playing, they let down. And that's not going to happen in the playoffs, right?
Yeah.
If Embiid's not playing in the playoffs, they're not letting down.
Right.
Look, Boston and Milwaukee are tested teams. They've been to the finals. Milwaukee's won a championship. They're going to be on their game. The Sixers haven't played at that level yet in any of the recent years. So,
and the reason he missed games weren't like he was worn down at the end of the year. It was, he broke his face twice. Right, 2 times. He had a knee. Was it the knee or elbow or hand? Maybe his hand, right? His thumb or something.
His hand, I think.
Yeah, so they're not like. Yeah, he had a ligament in his thumb or hand or something. So they're not like these are injuries, but they happen every year, and it's his style of play. The broken face was because he was being cocky Siakam, and and you saw what happened. They played rough. They like to play him rough. So, that's ultimately what it comes down to, but. I do think that these games showed that they can definitely hang with the big boys and are one of the big boys. No doubt about it. And like we said, they might have to get a little lucky. Maybe, Marcus Smart misses time in the playoffs and that helps them. Or maybe, God forbid, Tatum misses the game. Who knows? They have to get a little lucky. So, anything else before we move on? All right.
For me.
Okay. Well, let's jump to Gulfstream Park. And I am going to pull it up here. We're going to jump to the late pick 4, which does end with the Fountain of Youth, which is the race for the 3-year-olds, which is part of the Derby preps, like we've been talking about, leading up to the Derby. But we have a couple grass races for olders leading up to it. So we will go through the pick 4. We'll start here with Gulfstream Park. It's a mile. The Honey Fox. It's a grade 3. It's scheduled to go off at 4:05 Eastern time. So if you are tuning in and want to watch, it's about 4:05 Eastern. It'll be the first race that kicks off in the pick 4. Let's get started. We'll go Chalky. Let's jump right to you. Where's your head on this one?
If you could speak of the devil to run back to her early season form last year, I think it's her race. Her 2 races last year was one of the best races you'll see at Churchill in the mile distaff, where she just blew by horses, and then next time out she broke slow. It was a weirdly run race. Watching it again, she broke slow and then kind of got rushed up in the middle, which didn't seem like it was necessary, and then she just faded and was beaten by horses that she had just blew away at Churchill. But she's back on her best. She's the most likely, and then the 4 White Frost. For Mott, she's graded winner, has run is coming second off of a big layoff, but ran a good race last time out. Will be close to the pace or up on the pace. I suppose to speak the devil, if she gets first run, might be good enough. But speaking the devil on her game, I think is the best. I also might do something with the 10 Fastest Flight for Lynch and Ortiz. It's a big step up in class. For sure, but the horse has been progressively getting better and might get an earlier run. So if Speak the Devil runs any kind of traffic trouble, because it is a full field in this, might be able to get there ahead. But mostly leading on 3 with a little 4.
All right, how about you, Jason?
Yeah, I'm singling the 3 Speak of the Devil here. I remember when we were at Belmont Park, sitting there, and we basically had our whole pick 4 or 5, was it? I don't even remember, tied to this horse, and she destroyed us. But I just think she's the best horse in this race. If she runs back to what we know she could do, then I don't see her winning. She didn't break well in that race, and now she's been off, right? She hasn't run since that race. So she, and I just want to make sure that is correct. Yep, that's correct. But she just, didn't break well and just disappointed. Got some time off. Maybe she wasn't 100% after the race and they wanted to give her some time off, whatever. But she's super talented. It's Brown and Irad. I'm singling, and if she loses, I'm going to lose.
Yeah, I'm the same as Jason here. And although the other horses that Chalky gave out would be the other two that I probably would give as a backup as well. But I'm going to be single speak double. You know, what's encouraging to me is she ran so poorly at Belmont, and then she was off. So something obviously was wrong
Something
there.
was wrong. Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, she just ran poorly and there's no excuse, and you know what's going on here. But the fact that she's on this long layoff, that to me is encouraging. So something was wrong. So you throw that race out. You know, she ran lights out at Churchill off a 7-month break. She's on what, a 9-month break here, 8.5, whatever you want to call it. So she's run well off a layoff in the past. And Brown doesn't ease her back in. He doesn't put her in some kind of a lounge race or a small stakes race or keep her up, you know, against softer company. He throws right into a grade 3, which to me speaks that she's ready to roll. You know, it is a full field. It's a mile at Gulfstream, so traffic is always an issue. But God, I ran, you know, the top rider at Gulfstream. So yeah, I think that's a single for me. I'm going with Speak of the Devil. If she loses, I'm out. 7 would be, or 7, the 4 would be the other one. And then Chalky's horse, the 10. The fact that, you know, Walsh has 2 horses and Gaffione and Ortiz kind of switch the horses is a little odd here. You know, Ortiz jumps off to 7, goes to 10. Gaffione jumps off. But the morning line odds, the 10 is a shorter price. So that's probably the better horse, and that's why Jose is on. But Speak of the Devil for me. All right, let's go.
Just to clarify, that the 10 is Lynch, not Walsh.
Okay. So I misread that. The jockey stuff's still the same, but the
jockey's correct, but it's not the same trainer.
Okay, good pickup. But I'm going Speak of the Devil anyway, so it don't matter. Race 12, the Davona Dale. This race always seems to, I shouldn't say always, but does a lot of times seem to spark a pretty big price here. I actually see it's kind of that same way. We'll get into it. Jason, what was your thoughts?
Yeah, for me, I'm going to go 3 deep. You know, the favorite, the 3 Red Carpet Ready's my top pick, chalky pick, but she just seems to be tactical, and I think Saez may just take her to the lead and then just, you know, keep going. I'm also going to use the 5 undervalued asset. It's, you know, Brown and Irad again. I think one of those 2 are going to win the race. I just see it as being chalky. But my 3rd pick, I'm going to throw in the 1 Atomically. She was favored in the Forward Gale in the last race. So she's obviously got some talent. I think she finished 3rd in that race, if I remember correctly. But I'm going to throw her in here. You know, you probably get some value on her. I think her morning line was 8-1. You know, if she's anywhere around there, she's probably got some value to her. So I'm going to go with the 3, 5, and the 1.
All right, how about you, Chalky?
So this was interesting to me because much like their post times, Gulfstream drug on issuing the morning line, so I originally capped this race without them. And I was surprised that Atomically came up at 8-1. I thought might have been second choice at worst, and I was looking, probably wouldn't be value there, but I think at 8-1, there definitely is some value. I mean, the 3 and the 5 were the 2 I had on there to start with as well. But I'm going to spread a little bit more than Jason. Aside from the 1, I thought the 2 might have a chance. You know, the 1 graded 1 race she ran in, she was never in the race. Just didn't look comfortable watching that replay, and got wide and then got jammed up, and then just didn't look comfortable and dropped to last. Has obviously had success at Gulfstream. And then the other one I was thinking about was the 10, who I think was lower on the morning line than I was expecting. Leave No Trace for Serpy. Hasn't run as big of a numbers as the other, but has run consistently well. Ran second in the BC Juvie. Might like one turn a little better, I don't know. But has won. It was a grade 1 winner at Saratoga and has been in the number every time. So if there's a chance for an upset, I wouldn't leave her off either.
All right, so well, I'll play devil's advocate on the 1 here for you guys. So I mean, the races that the horse ran well were in stakes in state bred races, obviously. We're in state bred races. You know, she's come to open company, really good fields, but you know, hasn't really run anywhere close to those numbers again. And the fact that Eduardo Perez is the jockey.
Yeah, I think
mean,
that's probably why the odds are that they are is.
And I think that speaks to
from-
what they think of the horse as far as the big boys not riding for Pletcher. I mean, if Pletcher has a live mount, he's got one of the Ortizes, he got Gaffleone, he's got Saez. I know they all had mounts, but
she did run well for this Perez in the past. So I mean, maybe
again,
Pletcher just figures. Go
I mean, I just that's not a horse that I'm going to use, and I think that horse goes off closer to 12, 13 to 1 than lower than that. I'm with Chalky on the 2. Definitely like the 2. Biacone is having a kind of a sneaky Gulfstream. Maybe he's using that snake oil again. So he is. I think he won a stakes earlier in the
slippery meat.
And then the 3, obviously you can't leave the 3 off. I was going to add the 4 as well. Broke her maiden at Churchill in pretty impressive fashion. Went off at 7-1 in the Ford Gal. Didn't really break well and was wide the whole way, so you can almost throw that race out. Leperoux sometimes gives a sneaky good ride if you can get a horse close to the lead. He's a pretty good front end rider. Stretching out, so maybe the sprint speed does stretch out. It's a Golden Sense who can stretch out. So I would throw that horse, and then obviously the 5 Chad Brown's undervalued asset. So 2, 3, 4, 5. The reason the 10, that's such a tough post at Gulfstream at on the dirt. You got to be a pretty special horse, and I don't. That horse doesn't look special. I mean, good horse. It just seems like a tough post to overturn. Serpy's obviously been terrible at Gulfstream so far. But I wouldn't be opposed to, especially if I'm light in other races, to have an all in this race, because, like I said, this is one that I've seen kind of bombs hit. All right, let's move on to we'll go race 13, which is the Mac Diarmida. Grade 2. Diarmida. All right, it's a mile and 3/8 on the turf. I feel like this will have another similar combination that we've talked about in the first 2 races. But Chalky, we'll go back to you with your thoughts.
So my top pick, I believe, is going to be the morning line favorite. I didn't write them in. So 7 Astronaut for Albertrani and Saez. Grade stakes winner on both coasts, but has run his best numbers since coming east permanently for Albertrani.
Chalky, can I interrupt you for a second? Do you remember the significance of the 7 Astronaut?
I do not.
August 21st.
Cash a ticket at Del Mar for us.
August 21st.
Yeah. Okay. 24-1. Yeah. Okay.
That was.
I didn't remember.
Pick 6.
Yeah. Pick 6.
I
didn't remember. I didn't remember.
5 figures, Chalky. Come on now. That was 5
well, there
figures,
you go.
Chalky.
So, a horse obviously very close to my heart. I guess, I don't know. But anyway, that would be the graded stakes on the West Coast that I was referring to, and so he most recently won the Red Smith at mile and 3/8 at Aqueduct, and race before that lost to Warlike Goddess in a Grade 1, so no shame there, but have that horse on top, and then the other, so that's an A, and then I guess it would be a B, or if not a C. For me, was the 10 Value Engineering. Rarely do you see a horse move from Chad Brown and become stakes winning and grade stakes place, but it happened here. Went to Maker, has run the last 2 races at Gulfstream, can get the distance. The win wasn't off the track in the slot, but was beaten a length by Red Knight last time out, who Red Knight is one of the better longer distance horses in some of those races, which was a Grade 3. So I'm just going to go with those 2, and I'm going to try to beat the Chad Brown.
Yeah, I'm similar as the horse that is most likely for me is the 7 in Astronaut, which is, like we said, chalky. Surprisingly, these distance turf races, you do see front end horses kind of hold. They put them out there and they kind of just bottom out the field. Nobody better than Saez. Albertrani is a trainer who, when he gets a turf horse going, he could definitely keep a turf horse going. We've seen that in the past with a couple, maybe Savage Joy and a couple other of his better turf runners. So definitely Saez. I mean, I'm just doing a caveman, so I'm not going to give your A's and B's, and I mean it's definitely my top pick, but I can't leave off Chad Brown. I know Chalky said he wants to beat, but highest honors. I mean the horse has really not done anything wrong. He had 2 tough posts, 2 back and 3 back, and ran well. Moves to the inside at Aqueduct and runs well again. Lost to the horse that we both like here, an Astronaut. Gets another favorable post. Is Irad Ortiz, who just loves this course, knows how to run the mile and 3/8 races. He was actually the jockey on Red Knight, the horse that beat the one that Chalky was talking about. So he's won at this distance in stakes races. It's Chad Brown. 1-7 for me. Can't leave it off. Jason?
Yeah, I'm going to go 4 deep in this race. I think it's a tough race. My top pick actually is the 10, Value and Engineering. I think he's in really good form, and I really like Maker going long on turf. Like Chalky had mentioned, this is a horse that came from Brown. Maker somehow seems to have improved the horse. Maker going long on turf, like I said, can't go wrong there. I'm gonna go with him as my top choice. I'm also going to use the 2 Masterpiece. I liked him in the last race. On Pegasus Day, did not run terribly, but finished 9th, I believe, but only lost by 2 or 3 lengths. But I'm going to try him again, just because I was on him last race. I don't want to not be on him and have him beat me. Also, you have to use the 1. I think highest honors, Brown and Irad. I'm not tossing Brown and Irad in the turf race. I'm using them. And I'm also gonna throw in the 11, Aban. I know his form is not good, but I don't see a ton of speed in this race, and he's getting Rosario for the first time.
Well, Astronaut is going to be the speed, and that's
Astronaut has shown speed, but he also has come off the pace. So I don't think there's a ton of speed. I mean, maybe Astronaut is close to the front. I just don't see many horses that are going to be up there. So, Rosario, if he gets the lead, he could kind of lull everybody to sleep and just keep going. So, yeah, he's going to be a price. I figure I'll throw him in. And then just for sentimental purposes, I got to use Astronaut. I got to throw him in. So, did I say 4 deep? I meant 5 deep.
Yeah.
1, 2, 7, 10, 11.
All right. Now let's move to the big one. It is the mile and 16th Fountain of Youth, grade 2, 400K purse. We have our 2-year-old champ coming back for this race. Always fun to see when the 2-year-old horses come back, the 2-year-old champs come back. Do they carry their form as 3-year-olds? Usually it's a pretty good opportunity to make some money because a lot of times they do not, and they're going to be very short price. And that's the 4 Forte. But Jason, where were you thinking in this race?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it just all depends of whether or not Pletcher has the 4 fully cranked. Right? If Forte is fully cranked, I think he's going to win this race. I'm going to single him on most of my plays, just because I think he's the best horse, and I'm not going to single him on every play that I make. I don't see a ton of speed on this race, so I'm also going to take a small shot with the 7 Maj. He was impressive his first out, going 7 furlongs and winning on his first try at a nice buyer. Maybe he gets an easy lead and just keeps going. So I'm definitely going to use a 7 on some of my other plays. And then just for the board purposes, I'm going to throw the 3 Shadow Dragon in. He had a huge buyer jump in his first race, first 3-year-old race, and his first race going long. So one of those two equations might have worked for him. So just as a board play, I'll use the 3, but main play is the 4, secondary play is the 7, 3 for the board.
All right, and Chalky?
Yeah, I mean, this is a race I didn't necessarily want to take the favorite because of the angles you just mentioned, but from a figure and a visual standpoint, watching his races, he certainly stands above. He's lost once, and that was his second start, and hasn't done much wrong since then, obviously. So Forte would be a top pick, but he won't be the only horse I use. So I'm going to use 3 horses coming out of the Holy Bull. The 3 Shadow Dragon, who Jason mentioned, broke poorly. It seemed like it was way back and made a big move got into contention, and then didn't gained a little bit, but didn't go by. I don't know if that was more the horse just not wanting to go by, or he flattened out because he had to make such a huge move to get back in the race. But the ground he made up was visually impressive just watching the race. The other Mott who won that Holy Bull, Rocket Can, sat a nice trip and was able to go by. And then the 9 Cyclone Mischief, who had a terrible race performance in that race, has been hit or miss in some of these races, but he has been on or close to the lead on some of that. There is the horses that have shown to be on the lead are a little, lacking in my opinion in this race. So he might be out front at 12-1. I think it's worth throwing underneath if for some reason Forte isn't cranked and doesn't fire. But I would have 3, 8, 9 as backups to Forte.
All right. And for me, so I'm going to take the opposite approach as Chalky here. I thought the Holy Bull was a pile of slop run on top of a bunch of pigs with more pile of slop. So I'm not using any of the horses from the Holy Bull. Shadow Dragon closed into a pretty fast pace there, I felt. And I believe, didn't Rocket King come off the, well, he was not too far off the pace, but yeah, I was just against. So actually my top pick here is the 7 Marge. I could see this horse stretching out, was very impressive. Goes from Eduardo Perez to Castellano, who's been riding very well at Gulfstream. The horses at Gulfstream, obviously front end horses, tend to have pretty good success. Good Magic can stretch, I feel, to a mile and 16th. I think past that you're pushing it. So as a legitimate Derby horse, I don't. Well, we shall see. I think it's more just for this particular race. So I will use 7 as my top pick. But again, I'm giving Caveman's. I mean, I'm using Forte obviously for the same reasons everybody said. What's funny is I've bet Forte once in his career, and it was the second race when he lost. He's 4-5, and I'm 0-1 with him somehow. So, but yeah, I do think like Jason said, these are races that they don't usually have them cranked. We've seen it so many times where the horses come back and just are a little short. But you have to use. I mean, I'm not going to be live in a pick 4 and not have an even money horse. And then lastly, the horse that I was slightly interested in as well was General Jim. So General Jim, came back in the swell and did take that race. It was not a very contentious field. I remember that Super Chow was the favorite, who was a horse that runs on the front end and did just get a little bit tired. But General Jim was impressive. He was on second to last, and then kind of made a middle move pretty easily and took the race over and could have won by more. And what's impressive to me is his 2-turn races, which were on the turf, were both wins. And then he did run third. Although Aqueduct, I think that's a 1-turn mile, that the turf race. But the Keeneland and Saratoga are 2-turn races, so it proved he can go 2 turns. Can he carry the speed and distance on the dirt? I mean, that's a question mark. But I do, proven 2-turn horse who ran well on the dirt last time. Gets Sias. It's a show horse. So I'm going to use the 1. So it's 1, 4, and 7 for me.
And his buyer jumped with first-time blinks too, so maybe the blinkers.
Yeah, big time. Yep, very good point. So I actually like that horse a lot. I mean, the more I look at it, and I'm definitely not going to press Forte in any ticket, that's for sure. But we'll use. You guys want to give out a pick 4? I'm going to just give out a Caveman. I'm not going to do A's, B's, and go through a bunch of tickets. Jason, you fire away if you're ready.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna single Speak of the Devil. I think that was her name, right? Forget her name. Speak of the Devil. Yeah, the 3. Race 11. Race 12, I'm going to go 3 deep, 1, 3, 5. Race 13, like I said, 1, 2, 7, 10, and 11. And then I'm going to single Forte on the first ticket. It'll be for $1, $15. I'll do a second ticket where I'm going to throw in the 7 on the second line. And that will cost, for 50 cents, $15 again. All right.
And Chalky, did you have a ticket to give out here?
It's not a complete Caveman, but I'll give some. So I'll say for this purpose, single the 3 in the first leg as well. go 2, 3, 5 in the second leg, third leg single to 7, and then go 4 deep in the feature with 3, 4, 8, 9.
All right, and how much is that?
I didn't know there was gonna be math.
Well, why I give out mine? Figure it out. Did you already say it? I'm sorry if you did.
I believe that would be $12 for $1, but
12 for a
you
dollar.
go.
Right.
I'll come back to me.
All right, and for mine, I'm singling Speak of the Devil to 3. Next race, I'm going 4 deep, 2, 3, 4, 5. 2 deep in the next race, 1 and 7, and then 3 deep in the Fountain Youth. 1, 4, 7 for $1. That is $24. So some playable tickets and nothing crazy expensive. All right, let's go to the last race we're going to talk about on today's show, which is the Grade 1 Santa Anita Handicap, which is one of their biggest race, I would say, at Santa Anita outside of the 3-year-olds, but the biggest race they have. It's a mile and a quarter for older horses, and we got some familiar faces in this race. You know, this is a race where you could probably, the horses by name. You don't even have to look at PPs for the most part. I'll go first here because I'm not creative. There's a guy that's training out west that has 2 horses, and when he has 2 horses, he usually wins. Trying to figure out which one of those 2 horses it is not worth my time. It's the Bob Baffert is his name. You may be familiar with him. His 2 horses are the 5 Defunded, who ran second in the Pacific Classic, and probably the better of the 2, I would say. Proven older horse who's won great at races. Gets Juan Hernandez, one of the top jocks. And then the second one is Hopper, who's getting Mike Smith, the speed horse. Came up just short to Newgrange in the last race, who is running in this race as well. But who knows? I mean, Hopper gets on the lead. He gets that famous Baffert re-break. He just keeps going. And I don't have morning line, so I honestly don't know who the favorite is. I'm guessing Defunded. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I'm just using so Defunded is the 5. Hopper is the 8. If you're going to play, win bats or multis, just finish with those 2. And I think you're safe. Jason?
Yeah, and I'll just preface this by saying Tommy and I did not speak before this, but my spiel is, I think the race doesn't have any star power at all, but it's very competitive. It's actually a good handicapping race, but I'm going 2 deep, and it's going to be both their Bafferts. I think the 5 Defunded is the most likely the best horse. I mean, he should sit off his stablemate, the 8 Hopper, and probably go by him. But if he doesn't, my second choice, like I said, is going to be Hopper, the 8. I don't see a ton of speed in the race. So maybe Smith just gets the lead and just keeps going with the horse. I am going to try to throw the 1 in underneath. There goes Harvard to kind of hit the board. He did win the Gold Cup here in May, so he may just, be a Santa Anita horse and likes the track. So not using the 1 to win. I'm only using 5 and 8 to win, but I'm going to try and play around to get 1 onto the board.
Yeah, Proxy is another horse that loves to hit the board. I think isn't he the 10 horse, 9 horse, 11 horse? One of the horses out wide there. So he does like to hit the board a lot. So another one, maybe you want to throw it in the gimmicks. Chalky, finish this off.
1 horse, the 5, Defunded. 7-2 more line favorite, so it's higher. But not to repeat what Jason said, lacks star power, but it actually could be a decent betting race, especially if you don't like either of the Bafferts.
There's no way that Defunded is off at 7-2.
I'd be very surprised.
0.
So that's the one horse there. As far as in race betting, I'm going to use the 4 Stiletto Boy probably in third. He likes to hit the number, but doesn't win as much. And maybe even second with some of the longer shots. There goes Harvard is a horse that I had as potential second or third slot there with those 2 to sort of mess around with. Proxy, I don't have any interest in. So at 4-1, I'm going to try to get him out of the number on any other bets. And the defending champion, Warrant for Cox lost by head last year, but didn't run a lot of good races in between then. So maybe he likes Santa Anita, but I'm not going to be putting him in either, which with Cox is always dangerous, but I'm going to leave those out.
Yeah, I mean, this brief handicapping session on Santa Anita is the sole reason why California racing at times is just terrible, because Bob Baffert is out there. He has, I mean, there's stakes races where he had all 4 horses that ran in the race. And I think the long shot on the board won the race. It's like, come on. So you just don't know. There's so many games being played. You just have no idea what he's going to do. So we say this race looks great on paper as far as a betting race, and chances are Defundit wins and Hopper finishes second. It's a Baffert exact, and it doesn't pay anything. But we shall see. While we watch the races.
The one horse I didn't mention, is the 7 Haywood's Beach. He's hit the board in some of the longer races. Some of these horses haven't run a mile and a quarter before. I don't think he can win, but at 20-1, if you're
would have been easier if you just named the horses you weren't going to use. Probably would have been a little bit easier.
I gave you 4 horses I'm going to use.
Felt like more than 4. That's all. All right, I digress. It's this is a quick episode of Broad Street Hustle. Episode 43. You can catch us on all your platforms as always.
I do have a spot play if we want to.
Oh yeah, go for it. Oh yeah, I forgot. Go for it. Yeah.
I'm not going to even say it's a real spot play, but it's a bet I made this weekend. If we want to talk about it or laugh at me, go ahead.
I'll probably laugh. Yep.
I made a future bet in the NHL on the Eastern Conference winner this week. I took Carolina at 4-1, and I thought about betting them to win the Cup. They're 6.5 or 7-1, but man, the East is it's going to be a bloodbath this year to get to the Cup. So I backed off of that. There's a second choice, so it's not like they're a real long shot. They're a well-coached team, and I think they made a couple moves this week. Picked up the forward from Edmonton, Wright, and Ghost, who's actually improving after leaving Philly, believe it or not. So they're bringing depth on the bench as well. And their goalies have played well. Boston is the prohibitive favorite. They're going to run away with the President's Trophy, it looks like. But I thought at 4-1, Carolina was worth a shot to win the East. So I put that bet in this week.
I have one future Stanley Cup bet that I made a couple months ago, and it's Carolina. So, like you said, Boston just looks like a monster right now. What's that? What was that?
I said, so you could just tear that ticket up now, Jason.
Probably, yeah.
The Carolina ticket, you can tear that up now.
Yeah, Boston looks like a
chalky's pop.
Yeah, Boston looks like a monster. But like Chalky said, the West is horrible. Like the West, like anybody could win the West. I mean, you might even want to throw something on a longer shot in the West to get out of the West, but I don't see them beating the East. I did hear of a bet where I think the Cup winner, East versus West, I think the East was -150. Probably value on that.
I almost made that bet. So
probably value on that.
As of earlier today on DraftKings, they were -160 Eastern Conference, which numerically works out to be a 62% chance, which I thought maybe 66 was, but I didn't pull the trigger only because if you could win the East with having to go through a couple 7-game series, and if somebody just catches fire out West and doesn't have to go through that attrition, maybe they're a little bit better, not as beat up when it comes to that. Because I mean, if you're Boston, you're going to have to go against probably Toronto and Tampa Bay maybe to get out of that to go play Carolina, who will have to possibly face the Rangers or the Devils in the second round there. One of these West teams could go through. I mean, Colorado hasn't really gotten it together, but if they catch fire, they could come out pretty easily because nobody's really taking the reins over there. So we'll see. But I didn't pull the trigger on that bet, but I thought there was a little bit of value there, especially if you can get it at 150.
Yep.
All right. Yeah. So when you guys talk hockey, I'm like Meeker trying to judge a bikini contest. It's, I don't even know what I'm looking at. So
you're going to say Meeker talking any other sport, but
no. So, yeah, I'll have to trust you guys. I haven't watched too much hockey this year, and we don't really talk about it too much on the show. So, all right. Episode 43, Broad Street Hustle. Catch us on YouTube and all your major platforms. Follow us on Twitter at Broad Street Hustle. We'll catch you next week. Thank you. Have a great night.